Hello, and welcome to the presentation on how to be an instructor. I'm founder Brent Earlywine of the Combat Shillelagh system, and I want to spend some time today really talking about what it means to be an instructor, to be a teacher, what that path looks like, what the steps are that are required to get there, and really what makes quality instruction. And this will be from a view of you as the person offering the instruction or the transmission, as well as from the perspective of the student receiving that transmission or instruction. So let's get started. All right, at a high level, let's take a look at what we're going to be talking about today. The first batch of information is going to be really around instructor development. So, what happens after you reach black belt and you move into assistant instructor levels, instructor level, master instructor level, and then what's required to get through that, and then expectations that are really part of that process. We'll spend some time talking about developing and delivering lesson plans, how to run a class effectively. So when you're in charge of the floor in a live training hall somewhere, what does that look like? How do you run it? And then we'll set some expectations around your responsibilities as an actual instructor. And then, of course, one of the key targets here is talking about consistency and repeatability. Being an instructor is all about teaching that next generation, and we'll set some expectations around what that could, should, and really does need to look like. So let's keep going. So this first section is going to be all around and focused on development of you as an instructor. Over the years, I've kind of defaulted to a really good model in explaining or describing what the different levels of transmission look like, as well as kind of setting expectations on who's responsible for what, or really what it kind of looks like when you look at it in the level of understanding on the material that anybody may be studying and or trying to share or transmit to other people. And I'll start with the phrase there at the top. Um, Black belt learns the form, assistant instructor teaches the form, instructor breaks the form, and master instructor transcends the form. And let's spend some time here because I think it's a really important set of concepts to understand at a deep level. If you think of this as a person that is on their path to earning or has learned the black belt in our system or that beginning level in anybody's system, if you will, you're really you're learning the form or the forms, you're learning the concepts. It's really that first level initial transmission of information. You're very much more a student, so you're learning more than you're teaching or sharing. And that's probably 99% plus being the student, absorbing the information, being able to repeat it, perform it. And typically it's also fairly selfish as well, which means that you're learning for you, you're not learning for other people. So, as a person that is up to and/or including and earning the black belt, you're learning the form, you're learning the basics, you're learning the physicality of the techniques and the applications. After black belt, it starts to shift, and that shift period is where we have it mapped out as instructor, assistant instructor level. Excuse me. And at this is the point where you start to teach the form, and there's some really good stuff that takes place at this level. But you're still learning for yourself because there's still material to learn at assistant instructor, which is level 4 in our system, as well as instructor level, level 5, master instructor level 6. So there's still more material to learn. So you're always a student, but you're starting to turn around at the assistant instructor level and teach the basics that you learned up to and including black belt, or assistant in teaching those forms to the people that are coming up behind you. So this is your first foray into sharing or teaching. Typically, it's with some pretty heavy supervision from somebody that's a fully certified instructor or a fully certified master instructor. And then if you look at it at the instructor level and the master instructor level, they shift again. A fully licensed instructor really is starting to break the form. They're mixing and matching. They're able to create new perspectives on the material, apply it in new and unique ways. They're still very much teaching. They're teaching independently, but you're starting to understand how to break the basics or break the form. And then the master instructor level and founder level for myself, this is really about transcending the form. You're no longer focused on kind of the 1, 2, 3, this is how you do it. But you're able to mix and match, put things together in the moment. You're no longer consciously thinking about it. You're really at this unconscious competence level at instructor and master instructor levels. So to break all this down, make it simple there in the middle of the slide, first level, the beginning level, this is the initial transmission. You're receiving, you're earning your black belt. The middle level, intermediate level, this is the assistant instructor level up to and starting into fully licensed instructor level. And then the upper level, advanced level is fully licensed instructor, master instructor level, where there's more of this inner transmission. You'll also get into discussions here that it's verbal transmission and not necessarily something that's written down in a manual or on a piece of paper, but it's person to person training and transmission of concepts and idea. So the phrase at the bottom of the slide is also very illustrative. If you think of it this way, the beginning transmission level is really the technique itself. You're learning X, Y, or Z. The intermediate transmission level is the flow of the technique. You're able to stitch it together. It's no longer 1, 2, 3. It's got a flow to it. And then the advanced transmission level is this intangible kind of essence that's past the form, beyond the form, on the flow of the form or the technique, and you're really able to get above it, not have to consciously think about it, and again, put things together in new and interesting ways on the fly in the moment because you already have all those tools in your tool bag. So I'll go back to where I started, which is as a black belt, you're learning the form. As an assistant instructor and instructor, you're teaching the form. Once you get to full instructor level, you're starting to break the form. And then at a master instructor level, you're starting to transcend the form. Okay, in our system, after black belt is considered level 3. So once you've earned that rank, level 4 is the assistant instructor. So now let's talk about the development on how to earn that level. So first off, there is actual techniques and additional information that you're required to learn and understand that you have not seen at black belt level and below. So there is always new and existing material that you have to get your arms around, understand, be able to perform. So you're still a student, and that really never changes. Again, at level 5 and level 6, there's additional material as well. But here is where that pivot starts to take place. You're starting to teach or help teach. And really, one of the hard requirements here is I'm looking for 25 hours plus of actual teaching time in front of classes. So you're starting to share and transmit the basic information up to and including black belt one level below you to other students that are coming up behind you. And there's a couple of things that happen there and why we do this, but pause and hold that for 1 second. The other thing that I'm really looking for is as the assistant instructor or assistant instructor candidate, you become one of the main choices as a training partner for my senior instructors, for myself, because you have invested the time, you're moving really well, you understand the concepts. And we have an opportunity to maybe go a little bit faster, do more advanced techniques. I know you can receive the techniques. I know you're going to be safe. So it ends up being that you're a prime choice as a training partner. And actually, it's got a huge benefit for you as a student or a receiver or training partner. You really don't understand techniques until you have them done on you. So it's actually going to accelerate your own learning when you end up being one of the main choices as a training partner for a more senior student, more senior instructor, myself, what have you. The other thing that I'm looking for here is it's an opportunity to start to do some mentorship for new people that are coming in the door. So whether this is live or whether this is remote, You really are expected to help other people along that path. And then mentorship could be things like helping them getting access to the material, answering their questions. If you don't know the answer to a question, going to find it and then transmitting it back to them, making suggestions, giving them feedback on how they're doing in their training, helping them fine tune small details that are important for them to understand, and really acting as kind of bumpers, if you will, to keep them on a path that's going to continue on a growth trajectory for them as individual students. And it's important because, again, this is a transition period in your own training where you're making a decision. Am I training just for myself, or am I starting to train and train for other people as well? And it's probably a really healthy mix of a little bit of both here at the assistant instructor level. And then let's go to the last question there, which is, why is teaching important at this level? Um, and I have teaching in quotes, right? Because I'll tell you that you will understand material so much better when you have to break it down, turn around, and deliver it to somebody else. There's this interesting thing that happens in our brains when we're just absorbing information for our own knowledge, for our own repeatability. Um, we really will process information, store it in our brains, and then be able to perform it. But when you're forced to or asked to share that same level of information with somebody else, it actually makes you have to go back and reevaluate. Do I really understand this? Do I really have a good handle on it? And when you start to explain it to somebody else, you'll uncover your own gaps in knowledge, and you'll figure out where you probably need to spend your own time to fill those gaps, be better at what you're doing, have a better handle on the material, understand it at a deeper level, and really be much better at performing it and sharing it. There's some responsibility that shows up here, and the responsibility can be, I don't know, quite frankly, a little terrifying at times when you realize that you're now not only responsible for yourself, but you're responsible for other people. And we'll spend some more time talking about that here in this presentation. So let's talk about really the next huge step in that evolution, which is moving to level 5, which is a fully licensed instructor in our system. And just repeating some of the phrase that we started with on instructor development, the instructor breaks the form, and we'll spend some time there in a second, if you will. But from a practical perspective, if you're an instructor, um, you're expected to independently run classes on your own, basics class up to and including any and all material that you're responsible for. You're required to not only understand it, but also to be able to deliver it and teach it. Um, Again, you end up being one of the main choices as a training partner for other senior instructors or myself as the founder. Um, and we talked in the last slide or two that that continues to expand and deepen your own understanding of the material. When you have techniques done to you, you'll understand them at a much better level. So you're always going to be the training partner. We can certainly go even that much faster. We can do some open training where it's no longer a defined box that we're trying to stay within, because I know that you're going to have a skill level at this point that you can deal with it, you can process it, and more than likely, you're going to be able to show it in a safe manner that I need everybody to see. There's some training hall responsibilities. So at the assistant instructor level, you're helping teach, you're teaching some on your own, 25 hours plus, running classes. Usually it's with supervision. But once you get to instructor level, you're really going to end up having responsibilities for the entire training hall. So you may very well be the lead instructor for a local training group, or you may have your own space and some students underneath you. So that brings with it a whole other set of responsibilities over and above just the material itself. That could be managing a facility, making sure it's clean, up to date, It could be, ensuring all the equipment is there, that people have items to train with, making sure everything's a safe environment, and really kind of running that floor. And again, we'll talk about that in a second as well. But you've got very specific responsibilities, and they're higher and deeper than they are at an assistant instructor level. So at a full licensed instructor level, you've got some additional responsibilities, and you need to take them very seriously. This is not something that you should go into casually. It can be an amazing, enriching experience to help other people along the way, but go into it with your eyes wide open that there are some responsibilities that are attached to it. Um, as a senior leader, you really now are starting to represent the training hall, whether it's yours or somebody else's, and that's both internally and externally. You're an example, so that example means that you understand the material. You hold yourself to high standards in everything that you do. You may be very well speaking to outside individuals, either as potential new students or news media or what have you. So making sure that you are a good representation both for yourself as well as what you're representing. And then, of course, you are a mentor. The assistant instructor starts down that mentorship path. Again, probably with some supervision. They're just starting to get their wings open and starting to fly a little bit. But as a fully licensed instructor, there is an expectation that you're helping people be a better version of themselves. And again, that can be just the actual material and the physical training, but also other pieces of their life. And then why is teaching important at this level? It's basically the same answer as it was before. When you're responsible for material and you have to transmit it, it is really a deep requirement to make sure that you've got a handle on that material. And again, every time you peel it apart, put it together, give it to somebody else, you will find where you're either not completely comfortable with your own understanding, or you may very well have glaring gaps or holes in your own understanding that you'll need to go fix, fill in, and make sure you've got a good handle on it. And then that mentorship, to me, this is all really about giving back to the next generation. Somebody along the way helped you along your path. Somebody shared the information, somebody taught you, somebody fixed your mistakes. This is your opportunity to do the exact same thing. And I call that out because personally, I think this is extremely important. It is one of the main reasons, if not the only reason, to be an instructor. It's not about ego. It's not really about, hey, look at me. It's not about the patch or what have you. It's really about how can I help somebody else get to the same level or higher than I did or I've gotten to? And it's that give back attitude that I think is critically important. And then, of course, um, the example is not just in the training hall. I think it's also outside the training hall. This is about being a version of yourself that other people can look up to. You're some sort of liked in the community. People want to emulate how you live your life. And again, I think that's critically important. And to me, that's another piece that will start to transmit as you get to master level and above, that you're always working on becoming a better version of yourself in all aspects of your life, whether that's relationships, whether that's career, whether that's success, whether that's the physicality of the training and the arts. Um, when you're an example or hold yourself to high standards, you will find that other people will become attracted to you for the simple reason that you have an opportunity to help them, and you owe it to them to do your best to help them in any way that you can. So let's spend some time on the practical piece of being a assistant instructor, instructor, master instructor, and really, it comes down to lesson plans. When you're going to run a class or teach a class, again, whether it's face to face, whether it's remote, distance learning, what have you, it's really, really important that you are completely prepared. I always use a rule for every hour of class time that I'm going to deliver against and teach. I need at least an equivalent hour of preparation time. And that is really about a couple of things. I'm going to decide ahead of time on what's my topic? What am I going to teach for this particular class? Is it a particular concept or a specific technique or a specific application of a concept? Is it a particular stanza? Is a particular level of the information? that I want to go through. And whatever that is, I'm deciding ahead of time, I'm going to focus on it. I think it's critical that you're picking a particular path to start down, and then that helps you with your preparation. Once you pick whatever the idea is, whatever the concept or technique or application, stanza, basic, whatever, then you're really going to write down ahead of time and or double research or go back to your own notes and go, okay, I'm in the moment, I'm paying attention, I now have a good handle on what that material is. I may rewrite my own notes, and then I'm probably going to write down notes specifically for the teaching of the class, whether it's shorthand or a couple of words or phrases or something that really just kind of jogs your memory, or even just starting points. I always will do that and then bring that to class with me. So I'm preparing ahead of time, making that decision on the topic. Then I go back and research and reread and relook at all my own material, my own notes, and then I'll transcribe a short set of teaching notes for the class, and then I'll bring those with me to class. And then here at the end, you know, my recommendation, and I'll tell you why, is I always have a plan A, a plan B, and a plan C. And here's why. One, I have an opportunity to adapt on the fly if I already have it pre-planned out at multiple levels, kind of a choice one, choice two, choice three of topic and focus. And then what that does is that allows me to really adapt in the moment in the class if I find that people, either whoever happened to show up for that particular live class, they're not quite at that level yet, or they're struggling with it, or um, more than likely what I find, and again, you'll see this on a further slide, classes will kind of take on a life of their own, and they'll go down these alleyways and paths, and you'll get off on a tangent here and there. If you do that too often, it just becomes a chaotic mess. But if you follow some of those tangents, albeit staying within your original plan of an A, B, or C, you'll find that you can still kind of steer the class and move it towards some good learning experiences and transmission of knowledge. So I always have a plan B, plan A, plan B, plan C. And it's not uncommon that I get into a class. Plan A starts off great, and then very quickly, oh, I got to adapt. I'm going to shift to plan B. Oh, well, that didn't really work out. I'm an hour and a half in. I now have moved on to plan C. So just being adaptable and being prepared ahead of time is a critical skill set. And from a skill set perspective, this is really building a very specific skill set that's different. So I will say that it's one set of skills to learn material for yourself. It's an entirely different set of skills to learn how to teach and transmit to other people. And it's the act of teaching. How do you transmit it? How do you form and talk about and define and show and share information? And you will find that that is something that is a distinct and different skill set over and above just the physical, hey, I'm moving a stick around, or any particular technique or application. Okay, so you are now the guy or the gal that's running a class. Now, if you're an assistant instructor level, you're going to do this with supervision. And typically, if you're doing your, 25 hours plus of required teaching time and running class time, again, whether that's face to face or whether that's remote, um, usually the instructor or master instructor that is there doing the supervision really is going to let you fly and run on your own. And again, it's so you build the skills. You need to stumble and stub your toe a couple of times. It's okay. That's how we learn. And usually, what they'll do is if they give you feedback or they give you suggestions on what to tweak as you go, they'll kind of do it off in the corner. And I like to pull my assistant instructor and assistant instructor candidates off to one side when everybody else is, off practicing whatever you showed, and I'll give you some feedback, but it's really one on one off in a corner. And I will usually focus on the skills of how to transmit, how to run the class, not so much on the technique itself, unless there's something that's really just a glaring error or gap. But you need to be able to be fully responsible for running a class. So if you're running a class, again, assistant instructor, full instructor, start on time, end on time. If the class is at 7 p.m. at night. Be there early, you're on time, you're ready to go, and right at 7 p.m. that class starts. There's some consistency there that I think is really, really important. It sets an expectation for the students as well that, you kind of run a tight ship that, hey, if we say we're going to train at 7 p.m., we're training at 7 p.m. I also say the same thing, end on time. It is kind of two ends of that spectrum. One, if you run over all the time, you're not managing your time very well. If you run under, you probably didn't do enough preparation. You don't have enough material to transmit. It's not uncommon that you may end a class on time on purpose just because people are kind of the brain is fried. They can't absorb any more information, and that's okay. But start on time, end on time. And when you're on the floor, you own it. And what I mean by that, as the person that's up front, that's teaching, whatever your rank level, be very clear on what you're saying. Be loud and proud. In other words, project your voice. Make sure everybody can hear you. It's very common that people that are just down the path on teaching, they'll be a little timid. They'll be a little quiet in their verbalization. So make sure that you're very clear, you're very proud and loud in sharing and talking to the group. Tell them what you want, when you want it, and how you want it. So you have to also maybe go a little overboard on the clarity of details on what you want them to do, how you want them to do it, and when you want them to do it. How many times do you want them to repeat a particular action? Do this action, do it 3 times, and take the next 2 minutes to go do it. Or hey, I want everybody to change partners and go do it again. Whatever it might be, but have clarity on what you tell them. People strive for and look for good direction, and as the person running the floor, this is a important component. As a instructor, really understand who's in your audience, and it's very common you're going to have a broad range of skill sets, backgrounds. And people that maybe have a good understanding or don't have a good understanding, and everything in between. So understand who's in your audience. You're going to have to tailor your material and tailor your teaching, transmission, really across that entire spectrum, if you will. In the last slide, I talked about having a plan A, plan B, plan C, because quite honestly, if this is a phrase you may have heard, plans never survive first contact with reality. You do all your prep work, you got a really good plan in mind, you get to class, and something happens, and suddenly it all kind of blows up in your face, and you need to adapt and change and really follow either who's in the audience, or again, is there a particular path or alleyway that the discussions are really leading you down, and you want to take full advantage of it? And what I say is sometimes the martial winds will take you down an unforeseen path. It's almost serendipitous when you get into class and you start, hey, here's my plan A. I'm starting down this path. I'm starting to share information. And then it leads to really good places where, yes, let's explore that particular piece of the concept at a deeper level, or let's peel that back a little bit further so we can really, really play with it. You'll find that classes will have a natural rhythm to them. And if you follow that rhythm and take full advantage of that rhythm, again, within a certain kind of broader box or original plans or plan Bs, plan Cs, you'll find that the classes will end up being a very enriching experience for you and for them. Rhythm, pacing, time management. If you're running the floor, you know when that class starts, you know when the class ends. If you show something, you want them to go practice it. You really need to be conscious, excuse me, of how much time should they be spending? Too little, they don't get it. Too much, they actually start to degrade their skills. There's this interesting kind of bell curve that if you practice the same thing too much in a row, you'll only absorb it to a certain point, and then you'll start to kind of go back down the other end of that bell curve into negative territory, and the skills will degrade again. So you have to kind of watch that class, watch the interaction, and pay attention to how people are doing. And then walk the floor. What do people need? What are they really struggling with? You have to walk around. And again, if you've got a mix of skill sets on the floor, you're going to find out, and you're going to be required to really understand, tease something out that you saw for any particular individual and help them with it. And what that particular individual needs or has a gap around is probably going to be very different than the other person right next to them or even training with them. Because there may just be different levels of understanding of the material if they're at the same level, or they could be very different rank levels and have very different perspectives on any of the material that's being trained. So you're teaching for everybody in the class. And that does not mean that you spread it like a thin layer of peanut butter and everybody gets the same thing. You need to try to customize it for what each individual might need in the particular moment as they're training. The other thing that I have here is knowing when to break state. And what I mean by break state is, kind of changing the energy in the room and the energy of how things are going. People get all excited, they start to speed up, things may become unsafe. So you may have to call a pause, tell everybody to slow down. You may be down a particular path or, I say alleyway of material or a concept, and realizing that's really not, healthy for everybody. People aren't getting it. So break state, change gears, change directions, whatever term you want to use, but you start to build this inherent understanding as an instructor on when those moments start to take place, and you'll start to feel it, and then it'll get to a natural understanding where you go, okay, all right, time out, everybody, let's pause, take a break for water, or hey, everybody, let's slow down, or hey, pause, everybody, change training partners, or you know what, we've kind of exhausted that particular topic, let's shift to something else. You'll find that over the course of an entire class as well. You may very well get to the end of a 2-hour class. You're an hour and a half in, and then you go, you know what? We've kind of exhausted it for the entire class this evening. Maybe this is a good time to kind of pause, end class, and then we'll come back to it, tomorrow or the next day. I always end class with a closure and a debrief process. My process that I usually do is after we're done with class, I have everybody sit down, and then in reverse order from lowest rank to highest rank, I ask people, what did you see today? What are you taking away from this class? What was a bright spot that stood out in your brain as a concept or an idea or something that you really kind of had an aha moment? And what it does is it magnifies the learning for everybody when you do that, because now you start to get 10, 15, 20 plus perspectives on the same material that maybe you didn't even think of yourself. It's actually a great way as an instructor to deepen your own knowledge, but all the students are now helping one another. Everybody ends up acting as like a mirror for one another. Hey, I saw X, Y, and Z. And then you go to the next person sitting next to them and they go, yeah, that's cool. I didn't see that. Or I saw A, B, and C. And now everybody gets additional value out of the same amount of time and investment by sharing those perspectives. It's also a good way to make sure that the student is paying attention to say, all right, what did you really learn? What did you take away from today? And then whatever they call out, I'll either expand on it or confirm if it was a great concept that they walked away with. But I always recommend, hey, that's a really good thing to take away. You need to go down and write that into your notebook to make sure that you don't forget it. The other thing that I'll state here at the end of this slide is any of those kind of concepts or aha moments can be very fleeting. So I said in the presentation on how to be a student, the act of writing those down into a notebook somewhere actually helps you retain the information. So your notes aren't as important as the act of writing the notes. And the closure and debrief process is really the best place to capture those moments. Tell them, hey, take 5 minutes, do it now. Don't try to do it when you get home. You'll forget it. It'll start to disappear from your brain. Take full advantage of the aha and write it down for yourself. I've touched on some of these concepts, but I want to come back and visit a couple of them, right? So responsibilities as an instructor, and instructor can be a loose term, right? So assistant level, fully certified level, master level, kind of all blends together. But really, it starts with a question on why are you training or why do you train? Is it for yourself or is it for others? Not everybody wants to study and be an instructor or a teacher, and that's perfectly okay. It does carry responsibilities from a transmission perspective to being a mentor to give back to all that stuff. So I think it's a good path to go down, but it's not a required path. So level 4, level 5, level 6 in our system, there's actually additional and a lot of it. Material that you could also just be students or be a student at level 4, level 5, and level 6, and never actually teach other people. So you're really making a decision. I think that decision is important. I think the longer that you train, you'll naturally come to a, you know what, I need to give back. People helped me. I should be helping other people. But I've got folks that, are at high levels that really will do a little bit of teaching, mostly as training partners, or maybe make comments here and there in a particular live class or a live seminar, but they really don't want to be a full-time teacher. And again, perfectly okay. If you are going to go down a teaching path, then really some of these responsibilities is you're starting to instill a sense of community. You're bringing people together as a training family, and those could be folks that are local to you in your own local training hall, or the main training hall, or a local training group. It could be remote as you're delivering distance learning kind of content and material. But you're bringing people together because there's a commonality of common goals, common material, common outcomes, and the camaraderie, excuse me, of all kind of sweating and bleeding together, if you will, inside of a particular martial art. In this case, shillelagh stick fighting. The other thing that I would tell you is that you've got a responsibility to gain some outside perspective. So, in the How to Be a Student presentation, we talked about third party sources, complementary material, since inherently this is martial arts are violent. By their very nature, a good understanding of real world violence, how it happens, who perpetrates it, from thought leader experts, people like Rory Miller or Mark McYoung, Gavin DeBecker, and others. Those are examples of third party sources and outside perspective that really enrich the entire understanding. You don't want to be that one trick pony and you've never seen, talked about, explored, looked at, or understood other stuff that really is kind of the surround of what we do. Um, and I said this before, being that mentor, but helping others outside of the training hall. You can go as far and as deep with that, excuse me, as you're comfortable with. But I would tell you that, not only being an example for others to follow, but also helping others outside of the dojo, or the training hall, I think is a really important piece of being that example, being that instructor. Um, we said this before, and it's worth repeating, which is you can't teach it if you don't know it. The act of teaching, the act of instruction forces you to reevaluate your own level of understanding on any particular material or concept or technique or application. And what I find is your own learning for yourself will accelerate at a really fast level when you make that shift and you start transmitting it to other people. So that's got value all by itself. Even if you only want to be a student, going through the act of teaching in some batch of time will make you a better student because you have to understand it at a much, much better level. And you'll find yourself probably surprised at your own understanding, probably in a negative way, if you don't go through that process. You make some assumptions, think you've got it, but honestly, at the end of the day, you need to reevaluate it, peel it apart, tear it apart, re-break it down, and then transmit it, and then you'll see where your own gaps are. I talked about the material being customized for who needs what. So anytime that I run a class, run a seminar, again, I'll have content and material. I'll have people go split off and grab a partner and practice with it. But then I'm going to walk around and I'm going to customize that material because there are so many different skill sets in a particular group that have come together, everything from beginner all the way up to and including master level instructors and everything in between, which means that one size doesn't fit all. I do need to customize it and help people where they're at. And using language and content and concepts for their level or ability to understand. So I may say something very differently to a master level instructor than I would to a beginning beginning student. It may be the same concept, but I'll describe it in different terms because of how they process information. And then the other thing I'd say here is, you are, if you're running the floor, you're running the class, you are primarily responsible for everybody's safety and preventing injuries. And that means you're going to pay attention to things like, what are the skill sets that are in the room? Are people using too much strength? Are people moving too fast? Who's training with who? And what's really kind of the energy of the room. Again, as people get excited and fired up, they'll naturally speed up, which can create some unsafe conditions. You have to inspect the equipment. You have to make sure that people have safe training gear. So you are responsible. If there are any questions, everybody should be bringing to your attention if they've got safety concerns, something's broken, something's got a sharp edge on it, something's missing, somebody's practicing in an unsafe manner. Those are some of your responsibilities as the instructor when you run that floor. And the last piece here is, it's a phrase, just lights and locks. That means you're responsible for the actual physical location. If you're in a training hall, you're turning off the lights, you're making sure the doors are locked, you're making sure everything's put away. It doesn't mean you have to perform all those acts. You can delegate, but you are at the end of the day responsible for all of those items. If you are delivering in a remote fashion or distance learning or via a Zoom call or what have you, again, you're making sure that you're responsible for all the kind of table stakes stuff, right? Can everybody hear you? Did the call start and end on time? Does everybody have access? Has everybody been able to keep up? Are you steering the conversation? Are you ensuring everybody is engaged and practicing and active and interested? So those are the fundamental things that you have some responsibilities for, and you should be taking them seriously. We use the term transmission or transmit throughout the presentation. It's an important concept to really understand. So, transmission at the basic level is really, I have something and I'm trying to give it to you as another individual, and it's knowledge, and it's understanding on how to repeat or perform not only just the physical aspects of what we do as a martial art, but also what's behind it, the why, the reason that we do something. What are the real applications? So transmission is one of your core responsibilities as a instructor. It's how we get to next generations. Sooner or later, I won't be on this planet anymore. Sooner or later, you won't be on this planet anymore. So, creating and helping the next generation is really what the transmission as an instructor is all about. I've had folks tell me that transmission of martial art material is kind of like the river or a stream. The river or stream is never the same because it's constantly moving. It's moving downstream, um, and while it may stay in the same path, if you will, that's really the art. But the flowing of that water going from one generation to the next is that transmission piece. So if we talk about this in terms of consistency and repeatability is maybe a better way to understand it. Um, we have rank requirements that are very specific that are mapped out all the way up to and inclusive of master level. So level 1, green belt, level 2, brown belt, level 3, black belt, level 4, and assistant instructor, level 5, fully certified instructor, level 6, master instructor. And we did that. We codified it over the course of about 4 years of really hard work to map that out. What should be at what level? What's the material really look like? Is it has it been tested? Has it got real value to it? Does it hold up well when compared to other arts or outside critical eyes? So you're responsible as an instructor in our system or anybody's system for that matter to transmit it faithfully against whatever those standards might be. If you think about it this way, a copy of a copy, if you're making a copy of yourself, you're transmitting material and the art to somebody else behind you, how clear is that copy or how good of a copy is that? Anybody that's been around for a while, if you've ever done, Xerox copies, you make a copy of an original document, and then you take the copy and you make a copy of that, and then you do it again, and you do it again, you do it again. It gets really, really messy once you get out a couple of generations if people aren't being faithful to the original. I say it this way: the student's failure is a teacher's fault. It's another one of these responsibility things. You are responsible that you transmit to the absolute best of your ability with full investment of your time and effort to help somebody be not only as good as you, but hopefully better than you. I love nothing more than to see some of my instructors actually end up with better skill sets, do something cleaner, do something better than I ever did. It is an ultimate goal as a person that's trying to transmit that, hey, I don't want to just be, the guy up on high and everybody's below me. That's bullshit, quite frankly. What I want is somebody that I'm going to transmit the best way I know how, as much as I know how. And I want them to not only get to where I'm at, I want them to get well past me. And then I also want them to do the same thing for people that are coming up behind them. Um, if you're running a class or you feel lost or you're in doubt, the reason that we codified the system, or the reason that most systems are codified in some way, shape, or form is you always have the option to default back to whatever the particular requirements are by rank. You get, well off into an alleyway somewhere and you figure out, what, I feel a little bit lost. You know what, let's just kind of come back to reality. Let's come back to basic core concept or a stanza or a technique. And then let's reuse that as another starting point. So it's always a great baseline, regardless of what the rank levels are, that you can always come back to those requirements to make sure that you're staying on a good path, and you're not really kind of off on your own making stuff up, if you will. Um, so not only is that default back to requirements by rank, in other words, hey, you're teaching a lower level student, where are you? Green belt, brown belt, black belt, whatever. Worst case, you can always come back to what they're required to know at that particular moment in time, but you can also come back to those core concepts and basics, like we said. And then, is the student better than the teacher? That should be your goal. Are they becoming better than you, or at the very least, are they learning the same level of skill faster than you did? So that goes back to instructor skill sets. That if you know how to transmit properly, um, maybe they'll learn it faster and better than you did when you were going through the same material originally. It's something that I and my senior instructor has been working on for the last 2 years to 3 years, really on how we transmit the information, what frameworks we use, how do we describe it, how do we pressure test it, to make sure that the act of transmission is more effective maybe than it was originally. When I learned concepts, 20 years ago, 30 years ago plus, or even when I was teaching concepts to my cadre of senior instructors 10 years ago, 8 years ago, 5 years ago, or even last year, I'm always trying to be better at what I'm doing. And that's not just the material, it's the transmission of the material. I threw this in as a reference guide. It's on our website, it's in our student manual, it's plastered all over the place. Just know that we do have very specific ranking guidelines, everything from beginner, top left as a new student, to level 1, level 2, level 3, level 4, level 5, and level 6. So not only is there ranking requirements, there's material, and there's student learning material at the higher levels as well. So I said that earlier. I just want to repeat it because I think it's critical to understand. You don't stop learning, or there's not the end of the material once you get through level 3. There's actual additional deep, pretty deep material, actually at level 4, level 5, and level 6. So you can continue to be and always will be a student, as there's more stuff to learn that you haven't seen before. And it's structured that way on purpose. What I found over the years is stuff that's more advanced. I could show it to anybody. I could take master level material and show it to that brand new white belt, but they won't process it because they don't have a reference point. They have to get through the earlier levels to even have a jumping off point, to even have a possibility or a chance in hell of understanding the next step on that path. So it does have a logical progression to it. There is more advanced material. There's material with different kinds of lengths and types of sticks and how we apply them and what we do. Um, and usually, what you'll hear me say is once somebody reaches a particular rank, whatever it is, I'll tell them, okay, now we can train because you have a basis for me to reference and take you on the next step. And then they'll take that next step and I go, okay, now we can train because you have a deeper basis for us to have a conversation and move you forward and keep moving you forward. So, um, serious question, statement and a question at the same time. And this is part of the responsibility, but I want you to really internalize this, and that is the understanding that you are the next generation. Sooner or later, again, I'm going to get to a point where I'm not going to be on this planet anymore, and now it's in your hands as the next generation. And the question is, are you really ready to carry on the tradition? And look, this applies to my system. It also applies to anybody else's system that you're participating in. If you get to instructor levels, take that responsibility seriously. Um, are you ready to not only accept that responsibility, but then deliver against it? If you are not, it's okay. If you only want to be a lifelong student and just learn for yourself and you're not there to try to transmit to other people, that's perfectly okay. But be clear in that understanding. And then make that decision as the next generation. You have to decide consciously and probably decide multiple times consciously that you want to carry on the tradition. You want to create that next generation. And quite frankly, you'll get to a point where there's probably multiple layers of generations behind you if you go on to that path and really try to make sure that you're helping transmit it to other people. You'll transmit it to somebody else, you're going to help them transmit it to somebody coming up behind them, and so on. This is how you get arts and systems that survive hundreds or even thousands of years to make sure that people are invested in that transmission from generation to generation. So I sincerely hope you enjoyed our discussion today. I take the responsibility as instruction and transmission very, very seriously. I hope you do as well. I wish you nothing but the best and success in your own trainings, in your own endeavors, whether that's with us, which I certainly hope it is on a long-term basis, or anything else that you might be doing in life. So happy training and looking forward to seeing you on the mats at the next event or seminar.